Warren and Will's Wild Wine Reviews. Appreciate your joining us. I'm Warren with the 2,000 plus reviews at Vivino.
And I'm Will. I'm a certified sommelier through the Court of Master Sommeliers, and together we are
Warren and Will's Wild Wine Reviews. So today, the wine we're doing, let me see the bottle here. I believe that's pronounced Baruch.
I think
it is
maybe
Italian Primitivo, which means that it's Zinfandel for us Americans.
Yep.
And,
almost African.
Yeah,
that far south.
This has been decanted for 40 minutes. I would have preferred longer, but for 40 minutes I was able to do today. So 40 minutes we have done.
For 2016, that shouldn't be too bad.
Sounds good. No, it shouldn't. It's 15%, so let me give you the information that we usually give. I did not manage to get here with the notes because this is, once again, we're doing this at the Parkway Grill in Floyd, Virginia. Make sure if you live in the area, you come and visit these folks.
Absolutely.
And tell them thanks for letting us do this here in their wonderful establishment. So, at any rate, that sheet didn't come with me, but there wasn't a lot on these guys. Like, I couldn't find the name of the owners.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't find out how old the vineyard is. All that I've got is the fact that all that came up was that they have 25 vineyards on 740 acres.
Okay, so sizable.
So they're sizable.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they do lots. They grow about 5 different varieties of wines. All the varietals you would expect.
Right.
Let's see. The other info would be, and again, that was all the information I had. I had it written down, and I left it at home, but that was all it was.
Yeah.
So what we have here, according to Vivino, is 4.4 rating out of 5, which is quite good. Maybe one of the higher. I think we've done one that was higher than that, with 609 ratings.
Yeah.
So that's a significant amount of people to keep your score up that high. And with no further ado, let's jump into the wine.
Yeah. A very warm aroma. I'm getting like a kind of
a little bit of earth.
Some earth, definitely, like quite a bit of pepper, and like a pungent kind of black pepper. But there's also like a pungent, slight vegetal aroma, like that green pepper thing I'm always going on about. And some
a little bit of wax, which is oak.
Oh man, but it's like blackberry, raspberry. I'm gonna say up front, like very tart, piquant.
More red driven than black, which I'm not used to, especially from Zin. I expected, I've got the juicy mouthfeel I expect from the Zin. I don't know how much oak this has seen. It's seen some, but I couldn't get that information.
It's really funny. I just finished writing about tartaric acid and how this guy tasted malic acid, tartaric acid, like just literally in solution. And he said malic acid is the one that hits your tongue right up front, and tartaric acid is the one that grips you by the jawline. And I'm tasting tartaric acid in this one, like it's grabbing me right here by the bottom of my jaw near my molars.
I feel it across the top of my, just behind my teeth.
But as you swallow, you feel this little pull upward.
Yeah, I don't, but
no, it's just in my head now. It's it's like Bader-Meinhof effect.
Yeah,
I'm gonna feel it everywhere I go now. So I pulled up.
Quite tannic on the back.
Very, yeah, absolutely. That's adding to the acidity.
And it's a very acidic grape to begin with.
I was looking up
folks. I did not used to know that.
I'm looking up the region. So this is from Matera, which is a tiny DOC zone in Basilicata in southern Italy.
Yeah. And they're right on the ocean. They're right above it.
Yeah.
They overlook it.
But apparently, this region, Matera, was only awarded DOC classification in 2005. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't. What they would have it would have said Basilicata IGT on the label instead of Matera DOC. So that's kind of interesting. Like I didn't, it just goes to show they're still awarding DOC classifications, or in France, AOC, AOP.
Right. This is an Italian one.
Yeah. It just goes to show you that even though a lot of things are static, even nowadays things are still changing, because that was something I wasn't aware of.
Primitivo is Italian for
Zinfandel.
For Zinfandel, but not always for good Zinfandel. In this case, it's Italian for good Zinfandel.
But it's different. It's totally different from a California Zin.
And the average price on this one's $49.99.
Okay.
Is the average price.
That's nice. Yeah.
I don't remember what I paid for it. I actually bought this the week I got back from Ireland 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
So
okay.
I've been sitting on it for a couple of years, and I decided now was the time.
Yeah, for sure. The interesting thing is, if you're used to more garden variety, middle shelf Primitivo, this is definitely different. Like my dad buys
It's a little bigger, a little more full.
quite a bit bigger, and the acidity is a lot more full on. Even if you're used to California zins, don't think of this as an Italian zin. This Primitivo, although it is genetically identical to Zinfandel, this is not. They're not the same thing.
And mostly that's in the winemaking process. They do things differently than the Americans do.
Well, and it's interesting because they say on the label that the grapes are selected from very old Primitivo vines, left to dry for a few days on the racks, exposed to the sun, which
can concentrate your sugars.
Exactly.
A little bit.
So
in a few days isn't going to be like incredible,
but it's why the alcohol is a little bit higher. Yeah.
And there was something in there about pastel to get the alcohol up that I saw.
Well, I mean, they're making it like an Amarone.
Okay.
That's the Amarone style, is to dry it and to probably
they're not drying
pass
as
it.
long as you dry an Amarone, and they're not leaving it on
No.
the line as long as you would either. But it is giving you a little more alcohol.
Yep.
That's why it's 15 instead of 13.5.
Exactly. And that concentration doesn't just result in the higher alcohol, which bulks up the wine, although it does.
It's a little
It's
better
the
flavor,
concentration of flavor, exactly.
Because I actually prefer higher alcohol wines as long as it doesn't get expressed with hotness. You know, when it finishes hot, that kind of can spoil some of the other subtlety. It just
No, this
blows
is
it away.
dangerous. This does not taste 15%.
Right. You could get wasted on this.
In a
thinking
good way.
you were drinking a lighter wine.
Yeah, like in terms of the body, you're like, oh, this is substantial, but it's not. I would have guessed this was like you said, 13.5. I would not have guessed this was 15. It doesn't hit you in the face the way a 50% wine does.
I will say that I'm pretty sure. 40 minutes seems to be enough time for this one.
Yeah.
Because it feels wide open. Whereas often we're doing these wines and I've had them for an hour or two, and they're still in the process of opening up. This one's open.
Well, and the nice thing is that so we gave our initial impressions. We're getting a lot of pepper and spice. I'm now getting a lot more black fruit on the nose, like more blackberry.
Well, there's some blueberry there.
Blueberry. Some sweeter dark fruit.
But the strawberry and
Raspberry.
raspberry are still very prevalent in the first beginning of the sip. I mean, it fades onto your tannins and your spices.
But if you want a jaw-gripping acidity and a lip-gripping tannin, like this wine has both of them, and yet it doesn't come across as something that's not drinkable now or not.
Oh, it's ready.
Absolutely, for sure.
It's probably got another decade.
Totally
gone, but it's ready.
No, this is one of those wines that's fun. It would be fun to chart its progress because you can tell it's still getting better.
See, this is the cork. You can see that it is not nearly as dark as some of the other.
Oh,
corks
yeah.
that we have.
But it's going to retain its color. I mean, it's 6 years old now, and that's a very purplish red.
Just
So
starting to add a little bit of color to the top of it. A little bit of dark green.
I was refreshing my memory on acidity in wine, and it's really interesting because tartaric acid, it's found in some other fruits, but by and large it's predominantly found in grapes.
So I assume then that has a relationship to the acidity.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the tartaric acid is part of the reason that wine is so shelf stable. It's got a higher pK or a lower pKa and thus a higher acidity than other organic acids, and it makes it a lot harder for microbes to grow in it. That's part of the reason that.
So explain that higher
pKa.
pKa.
It's the
those of us who don't have a degree in
chemistry.
In chemistry, yes.
It's basically the ability of the acid to lose a hydrogen ion and cause the acidity of the solution to rise. So basically, when you're looking at pKa, it's basically saying the higher it is, the more likely it is for that acid to hold on to its hydrogen molecules and thus not make the solution acidic. When you have a lower pKa, the way tartaric acid does, it creates more acidic solutions pound for pound with the you put the same quantity of tartaric acid, malic acid, acetic acid, whatever. Tartaric acid is going to make a higher acid solution. That's part of the reason that wine inhibits microbial growth so well. It's not just the alcohol itself alone is not enough, because at 15% it'll stop some microbes from growing, but I don't remember what the exact limit is, but you have to get up into spirit level range before you'll completely inhibit the growth of microbes. It's partially the acids that are in the solution, and the main one is tartaric acid. And it's also what makes wine's color so stable over time. So if grapes didn't have such a concentration of tartaric acid, the wine world would look completely different, especially the vintage wine world.
After 20 or 30 years, you do start to see some combining of the tartaric acid with the pigments from
Absolutely.
the wine. But again, as you're saying, they don't change that
It just,
much.
it slows it. And I mean, wine's an ongoing chemical reaction. It's just happening in real time, and you get to watch it happen. And so when you, after 20 or 30 years, you're like, oh wow, this reaction's kind of gone somewhere. That's sort of interesting.
And 20, 30-year-old wines go from that's sort of interesting to, oh my God,
Yeah.
why did I sip that? And I had all of the above. No, it drove me crazy. I was reading a science fiction novel recently. Don't even remember the author's name. I should, but there's so many.
Yeah.
I was reading it to publish it, and I did publish it, but yeah, it's previously published back in the 60s, and he's got these guys who, his grandfather died. It's a time travel story, and he's in his grandfather's estate, and they've got these 100, 200-year-old bottles of wines, and he's just going on about how great they are.
Yeah.
And he never breaks a cork. They have no trouble opening any of the bottles.
Right.
They never remark on, that's awfully brown.
Right.
All the things I would expect.
Whoa, tons of sediment in this one.
Right,
Yeah.
on an older wine, none of those things existed. And it was near future, so it wasn't like we figured that out yet. So, and these wines, even if it hadn't been that near future, would have been in a time. And that stuff can kind of drive me nuts as somebody who's also, in the publishing world. To know.
Now, what year was this written?
It would have been written probably somewhere between 68 and 75.
See, one of the things, or I would say two things. One is, and between 68 and 75,
Actually, that's wrong. It would have been before 63.
Okay.
I'm looking at it. So it was somewhere between 58 and 63.
You and I are lucky in that our access, even if I can't afford them and you can, but even if I can't afford them, my access to aged wines is much greater than it was by sheer dint of the reason that A, there's just more wine, B, more people are aging stuff, and whenever you have more of something, the relative cost to the consumer drops.
Right.
So in his time period, having access to 100-year-old bottles of wine in the 1960s or 50s would have been not unthinkable, but it would have been very, very difficult.
Right.
Whereas for us, finding a 1929 bottle of Chateau Latour, difficult but not unthinkable.
Expensive,
but doable.
Money, right, but doable.
And the other thing is that with the internet now, even if I had never had an aged wine in my life, I could start pulling up facts on the internet. What's aged wine like? Well, tell me about.
What's the downside? There'll be 5 blogs that'll tell you.
Let me pull up a YouTube video of somebody opening them. Oh wow, the cork breaks. Whoa, look at how brown that is. Okay, cool. And
he should have at least had a thing about the cork he used,
right?
The cork screw that he used, using one of the 2-pronged.
The wine teeth.
And pull those out, but nothing. And and of course, 99% of the people reading the story aren't going to care, so I get why they don't bother with that. But I try to make every fact.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's one of the things that's nice about living in the modern era. Is I'm willing to cut the guy slack because of when he lived. When I began
just look it up.
Exactly. When I began writing my novel, I set one part of a combat scene on the Normandy coast and another on the streets of Berlin, and I was able to use Google Street View. Now, of course, I wasn't able to use 1945 Google Street View.
Right.
That's where I took artistic license, but I at least was able to be like, Street A connects to Street B via Alley C.
For me, it's amusing how much the world has changed.
Oh, yeah.
My first computer programming course, I had a minor in computer programming until I decided
didn't
it was
know that.
way too boring. Yeah, well, I didn't stick with it.
Oh, okay.
Because I was bored out of my freaking mind. I thought I would do that.
Which is why I do
while was
ebooks for you.
writing. Right, because I hate all that command stuff. I hate it. But at any rate, the professor, I knew him from, he was a middle school teacher of mine, and he and I, we both loved science fiction, so we were tight. And when I walked in, he was happy to see me. And I remember we were having a discussion. He had a writer because when he wasn't teaching school, he was selling computers. And so for 3 months out of the year, he would sell computers and make a lot of money because they were really freaking expensive back then. And he had a writer come in and say to him, now mind you, I'm having this conversation with him. He's talking to us about this in 1984. And that year.
Yeah.
And he was saying, the writer came in and said, I just want to be able to go on and see how tall Pike's Peak is, so I get that right in the book. Does anything like that exist online?
Yeah.
Or it wasn't really an online. Can
Right.
I do that with my computer?
Yeah. And
he said, you can't, and you're never going to be able to. And what he said, class. I said that to him 2 years ago, and right now I'm thinking I might have been wrong. And I still kid him about it because he and I we still connect. We're still on Facebook friends, and I send him copies of all the books because he loves science fiction that I do.
Yeah.
And every now and then I'm just like, and I might have been wrong, and we both laugh because oh boy was he wrong.
Yeah, but I mean the thing is that My friends and I talk about this all the time. Growing up, I was born in 1985. If you were born in that time period, like between 80 and 85, the technological expansion wasn't just exponential. Certain things were being invented and then left behind within 1 to 2 years just because they were considered cutting edge, and not like car phones. Car phones were cutting edge for like a year or two, and then all of a sudden cell phones had left them in the dust. And the 90s and the 2000s were full of things like that.
And it's also interesting to sometimes see what happens that stops a thing.
Yeah.
When I worked with Kiss, Paul Stanley did not have a cell phone.
Right.
He had a stat phone.
Right.
So a sat phone. So it didn't matter where in the world he was. He could get, as long as he wasn't underground. I remember talking to him. He's like, bullet train, we're about to go under a tunnel.
Yeah.
It was the only time I'd ever lost him on a conversation.
That makes sense.
Because it didn't matter where he was.
Yeah, the rock layer would block it.
Now those were set. They were primed. They were going to take over the whole market.
Right.
They didn't have smartphone versions. So
Right.
Apple came along and just annihilated it. Because it's great, but all your friends have got a BlackBerry and an iPhone, and they're doing all this stuff, and the sat phones don't do that.
Yeah.
So they were set to just destroy iPhone. To destroy cell phones, because you need that cell coverage. Whereas if you can see the sky, you got your phone with a sat phone. But they didn't move as quickly into the smartphone.
Yep.
And they got beat out by an inferior product. Think Betamax. That's really what happened.
And that's mainly the thing, is that in the 90s and 2000s, certain things would start and they'd be cutting edge, but their technological velocity, for lack of a better term, would be slower than something else. Whether it was because it was inefficient or it was just it didn't have as much market share, so there wasn't as much research being done into it. Kind of like the water-powered car or the electric car. It's not that they are not feasible, it's that the gasoline-powered car happened to dominate the market early on and grabbed everything.
Harlan Ellison used to love to fax everything to me. And I'd be like, dude, could you just email this to me? Because I don't have the changes, I don't have to input them. He's like, no, but I understood part of why. He was the first person, he called it a facsimile machine.
Yeah.
And when they made a fax machine, the person who made it apparently had some influence based on that short story.
Really? He invented the name?
He invented the name and
That's
the whole
amazing.
concept. So Harlan faxed everything that he could to
I guess I would
everyone,
too.
because it was his thing. The fax may not have existed without Harlan Ellison. So he's like, here's the corrections. I'm like, I'd just rather you did them and mailed them to me instead of putting them on paper and scanning it. He's like, I'm Harlan Ellison, I'll do what I want. I'm like, you're Harlan Ellison, do what you want. And
also, I invented the name. I get that. I get that. I really get that.
I might have been on the same.
If I invented the term electronic mail, I would
email everything.
I would email everything and refuse to text anybody.
No, could you Dropbox this to me?
Nope. It's coming via email. Yeah, no, my dad is funny. He refuses to get a smartphone. But I was showing him pictures on my phone, and he said, "These are really good resolution." I said, "Yeah, smartphones have amazing cameras." He said, "That's so cool." And I was just teasing him. I said, "Does it make you want one?" He said, "No, I don't really take that many pictures, but I like looking at yours."
All right, back to the
wine. Yeah, let's re-up.
We should probably leave a little for the folks who
Yeah.
are here.
Oh, yeah. This is good.
This is a good wine. Yeah, I'm enjoying this.
This is nice.
The Primitivo. I used to drink nothing but Zin. Well, I've never just drank one kind, but
right.
80%
When you and I met, you were
Zins.
predominantly Zen.
But now, I just come back every now and then, and this is nice, fond memories.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that my initial impressions, and this is why it's so important to notice the evolution of a wine. My initial impressions, while they weren't bad, are so much different than my current
more
impressions.
Vanilla now, which is I guess it is still opening up. I may have been incorrect there.
It would be neat to know. I'm going to guess that this had a fairly significant amount of time in oak. I'm going to guess over a year.
Yeah, I just couldn't find the info. I
I know.
I usually share that. I want to share that with you. It's important.
Yeah.
But I couldn't come up with it.
I don't know if I'm shooting from the hip and wrong on this one, but I feel like sometimes wines that are a little bit different on their initial impression versus their later impression have seen more substantial oak aging.
Yeah,
where the ones that don't have much oak
That
aging
seems to be the case.
don't, and not that they
got all
don't
that tannic
change.
structure.
Yeah,
holding it,
yeah.
And then it starts
The
to
wood-derived
fall
tannin.
apart, and thus opening it.
Yep.
My hands here probably are not expressing the thought that's in my head, but it's what I got.
No,
Thumbs too.
the wood-derived tannin really adds a whole different level that wines that only have fruit-derived tannin are going to come across much differently.
And the tannins here are still pretty tight, pretty strong tannins.
But it's remarkably flavorful, all things considered.
And it's hard for me to discuss the tannins with other people because I don't know at what level you can deal
Right,
with tannins.
yeah.
I just don't have a problem with tannins,
Right.
unless that's all I can taste.
Well, I'd say it's not just that you don't have a problem with them; you crave them.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. I do like the tannic feel in my mouth.
I think that part of the reason that your trend has been towards cooler climate wines that are higher in acidity is that acids actually cause your palate to notice tannins more. So that if you have a high tannin wine that's at low acidity, part of the reason that the Zin stopped doing as much for you was that at low acidity, tannins just really, they're a little more lazy. With high acidity, it's all of a sudden it's like, wow, if you took that acidity down, you'd probably be like, oh, this wine is super flabby.
And this one's a bit higher acidity than most American
Correct.
Zins are
So
ever
it's
gonna
got all the things working for it. High alcohol, high acidity,
Yep.
high tannic structure.
be. And that's the thing you'll find with the Primitivos are going to have a little more acidity than yours in American Zins.
Yep. No, it's really funny how that works. You don't notice it until you put all the things in concert with each other. I had people one time, like I made an acid solution and a tannin solution, and they tasted them separately, and then I had them put it together, and they're like, "This seems way more of both." I'm like, "That is the magic of the what." Whenever you introduce a complex chemical array of things on the palate, it all interplays in some way, kind of like when you have like piano and bass and guitar and drums, and if you listen to any of them separately, they would sound totally different, but you put them together and you get a song. Not only a song, but where the sum is greater than the individual
And what's
parts.
interesting for me, like the thing that really makes it a song is the drums, and that's like the only thing that can't really.
Well,
do
you're a
anything on its
bassist.
own. No, that's not really. The
Oh, really? Okay.
issue. Even when I play guitar, the drums is what then turns it into
True.
an actual, for me, song.
True.
Whereas you can do what looks like, sounds like, and feels like a song with a guitar.
Right.
You can't do that with the drums. You
Correct.
need accompaniment. So that's for me interesting. That it always felt incomplete until the instrument that's the least able to hold on its own was there.
Well, and it's kind of funny. My point of comparison is salt. Like no one would ever eat just salt, but
Yeah.
if you ever have a meal that's lacking salt, you really feel its lack
Go to
very
Ireland,
strongly.
you'll feel it.
They're not known for their cooking, unfortunately.
No,
Although some of their cooking is
and
quite
they always
good.
say, you can really taste this, or you can really taste that, and I'm like, dude, I know what steak tastes like. I mean,
Now, when it comes to potatoes,
yeah. In fact, we just saw one of them. We have friends in Ireland because we've been there. We lived there for a while.
Right.
And one of my friends was on Facebook. He was an American who married an Irish woman who was over there, and his friend was saying, I forget what it was, but he's like, it's Irish, so you have to taste that. And both of us like, dude, no,
no.
that should never be eaten without accompaniment,
No.
without condiments, without spices. You're talking about boring ass food, and I know the Irish and the English are both like, that's not true. Yes.
There are
yes.
some unfortunate stereotypes. Now, I will say this: if you go to Ireland and especially if you're by the
The
sea,
Indian food is quite good.
oh
in
yeah,
Ireland,
yeah,
which is surprising.
And the
because
salmon.
I haven't had salmon over there that I'm aware of.
Oh, really?
Well, I can have that anytime I want.
Well,
in
true.
America, so when I'm traveling, I'm trying to eat stuff I can't get my hands on in America.
Fair enough. I just want to say they nail it.
Okay. Like I always eat lots of legume.
Legumes?
No, shrimp. It's a kind of shrimp that we don't have here. Linguine, something like that.
Okay, I can't remember. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I can't. I'm not grabbing onto it either.
But they're here when we have them. They call them lobster. And they're
Uh-huh.
not. They're
little-
shrimp.
yeah.
But they look a little like lobster.
Like a low lobster?
Yeah. But it tastes more like shrimp.
Right.
But so when I'm over there, I'm trying to have. They have a lot more duck dishes in Ireland. Than
Yes,
we ever
they do.
dreamed of in
Mhm.
America. And so I eat lots of duck when I'm there.
I glommed on hard to the salmon when I was in Ireland because I love all fish. I love smoked fish. And so I was in a place, Ireland's an island nation. You're never more than an hour and a half from
Right.
the ocean, no matter where you are,
Yep.
and often closer.
Yeah, I mentioned to somebody that I was 6 hours to the ocean.
Yeah.
And they're like, there isn't a single place in Ireland where you were 6
Hours from anywhere. Yeah, you're about 4
Anywhere
hours,
else,
maybe.
But if you're in the northernmost tip, and you
Yep.
want to go to the ocean in the southernmost tip, you will be there in less than 6 hours.
It only took me 4 hours to get from Derry to Dublin because I was going by bus. If I'd been going by car, it would have been probably two and a half. They travel slower and they stop at places. It just
Right,
happens.
Yeah, I was like an idiot. I paid almost $5,000 a month every month I was there
Yeah.
for a car.
Yeah.
I could buy the damn car. Next time around, I didn't realize that my buddy didn't
Bus
have
pass and a bike.
Because if I'd known that, I could have bought a $2,000 beater,
Yep.
paid a couple grand for insurance,
Yep.
given it to my friend in Ireland when, have him buy it, give him the money to buy it, give him the money to insure it, and after the year that we were there, leave it with him. And it would have been way cheaper than renting a car every month.
When I went to Ireland, I was traveling with my cousin Mark, and I'm going to do a horrible Dublin accent. But Mark said, well, it's kind of a long trip from Dublin to Limerick. And I was like, how long are we talking? He said 2.5 hours. I said, Mark, it took me 4 hours to drive from where I live to the Dulles airport. He's like,
I had a hard time explaining
that's amazing
to people that until I've been in a car for 6 hours, it's a short drive.
Mm-hmm.
After 6, it starts to weigh on.
Right.
And they're just like, after 6, like
America's a big country.
It's a big country.
It takes about 6 hours to get from where we are sitting to Nashville. It takes about 6 hours to get from here to like southern middle Jersey.
Here's a really strange thing. All right, so stay with me here. There's a beach that we occasionally go to in Maryland. It takes us 6 hours to get there. We occasionally go to, very occasionally, because I don't like it much, we go to Virginia Beach.
Mm-hmm.
It takes me 6 hours to get there.
Right.
We go to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. It takes us 6 hours to get there.
6 hours? Like
6
Hatteras?
hours. Yep, 6 hours. And when we drive to Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, it takes us 6 hours. We went to a beach in Georgia.
6 hours.
Mm-hmm. And it's because of the mountains and the
Yep.
way you have to drive further to get
Yep.
to these places or less far, but you're not driving as fast. Some of it, one of those drives, at no point are you on the highway. There is no highway going there, so it takes longer, even though it's closer. So I'm just like, which beach do you want to go to? And my kid always laughs, the one that's 6 hours away.
Well, it also
which is all of them.
It also helps when you realize that the American coastline goes from northeast to southwest, and that therefore, as you travel further south, you're technically
You can just go straight
you're just
down.
you're just going straight south to the beach. Whereas when going to Maryland, you're going pretty abruptly northeast.
Well, and the thing about that is, like, what you have to do to get to either that beach or the one in Virginia is you have to go up around the mountains and then come over. And at that point, you're the same distance from either one.
Exactly, and
Because
to the one in Maryland, you have to go around
a little
DC.
bit. Once you're up past the mountains, you have to go back a little to get to Virginia Beach, or go up a little, and then you're at Maryland Beach. So
Virginia Beach is almost directly east of us. It's a little bit south, but almost directly east of us. You just get on 58 and it's a straight shot.
Curie, all of those take me about the same amount of time to get to. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, when I first got here, I'm like, that can't be. But I've driven to all those beaches. We do 3 to 5 beach trips a year. It's always 6 hours.
Working logistics, I found out that it is roughly the same distance from, I think it's Wise County, Virginia, which is just over the Virginia-Kentucky line. It's the same distance from there to Norfolk as it is from there to Charleston, South Carolina.
Wow.
And that was when it drove home. It's like, wow, it's not just that we're far west, it's also that we're far south. Yeah, as the crow flies, I think we're 20, 25 miles from the North Carolina border. I mean, we're very close to the North Carolina border.
We're 100 miles if you want to drive it in any really reasonable way.
Right.
But not be on dirt roads.
Yep. Mountains change things.
Yeah, they do. And I love mountains.
I do too. Psychologically, our distance is much different than our physical distance.
Let's not go too far.
Oh, right. I'll shortchange myself
Sorry,
here.
bro. I would have let you have
That's okay.
the larger pour.
It's okay.
Oh, well, there's not enough. I might as well finish that.
You think?
I did let Callie have some at a time. That smells good coming out of that glass, though. I'm sitting there like, wow.
I'm getting like a cranberry.
Oh yeah, there's definitely cranberry in there. I didn't bring that up. It's not one of my favorite tasting notes, but it's there. It's not like overpowering.
Which do you like less, cranberry or plum?
Plum.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think plum is your least favorite.
I've had many with cranberry that I'm quite happy with.
Yeah.
I don't want it to overpower. I don't want it to be too.
And it's
too
not.
tart.
It was mainly just in the pouring aroma.
Yeah, it's mostly
It's mostly in the nose. I'm
yeah.
not getting as much of it. Well, and also specifically from the aromatics that by aeration.
Slightest hint of pomegranate too to go with that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
But again, this isn't tart. It's really more in the nose.
This makes me really want to look more into. Well, I don't know how much I'll find from Matera because they said it was a tiny DOC. But Basilicata.
These dudes have got 740 acres.
True.
I mean,
True.
They should be producing a lot of wine.
You know what I should do is I should go into Republic and see what Connie's got because I want to see who distributes this. Bravo.
I gave Connie a bottle of Paul Hobbs because she never had it.
Cool.
Like she's like, oh, this is so. I'm like, you do tastings. You
Yeah.
decide what wines come in here. I want you to know what Lauren likes.
Yeah.
So here you go.
It always behooves you if you're into wine. Sometimes the people that sell you wine
And
don't.
Connie works at the local store.
But sometimes they don't always get to try the
Right,
best stuff.
they don't get to try the $100 bottles. So
And if you
I
pull them
always
in on
give
your
them-
end,
when I
mhm.
talk to them, I find out they like wine and they enjoy it. And they're like, oh, what'd you think of this cab? And I'm like, it's a real intro cab, so it didn't do anything
Yeah.
for me. But here, try this cab, and I buy it for them and I hand it to them. And they're really nice. They're always pointing
Right.
me at the good wines, giving me discounts if they can.
Right.
But two, then they know what I like, and when they taste
Yep.
something like that, they're like, oh, we got to bring this in because the dude who's nice enough to give me free wine will enjoy this.
Well, and therein lies the problem, because a person can have the best intentions in the world and be like, okay, Warren likes cab. I've heard him talk about how much he likes
they
cab.
bring in a ton of cabs I won't drink.
Exactly, and it's not because they are stupid or
They
don't know
never
wine.
taste it, they don't know the difference.
Right,
They don't
and-
know why
and-
I like the Paul Hobbs cab and not the Apothic Red cab.
I had a friend of mine recently ask me to recommend some wines to her, and it turned out it's like, I'm sure that she likes wine, and she was telling me sort of vaguely what varietals she likes, and I said, okay. I said, rather than me get frustrated about this, because it's clear that you like wine, and I'm sure you've had plenty, and it's not that it's like, I want you to do something for me. I said, I want you to go out and I want you to buy 3 wines, and I want you to keep a notebook about what you like about them and what you don't like, because what you don't like is just as important about what you do
Absolutely.
like. And she got so excited, and she said, oh my gosh, I will absolutely do that. And I said, honestly, what you like, what you don't like, both of those things help me sort of plot.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you tell me that you like Malbec, I'm gonna, okay, what kind of
Yeah, see, his
Malbec?
Malbec very seldom does anything for
Right.
me. It's just got a little rougher
Yep.
edge to it that I don't really find all that attractive.
Or let's go back to Cab. If somebody tells me they like Cabernet Sauvignon, I'm going, okay, do you like
Boy, that covers so much ground.
Do you like Australian cab? Do you like California cab? Do you like French cab? What type of cab are we talking here?
Because French cab's going to be a million times lighter than California cab.
Yep.
Which will be different, very different from a cab grown in a much hotter climes
Right.
in Australia.
Or a Washington cab?
Yeah, which
you
is
know?
even cooler still. I mean,
Right.
my favorite cabs are Washington and Napa.
Yep.
I mean, I enjoy cabs from France. I mean, I like Chateau de Pape.
Yeah. Well, and you also like Bordeaux's.
I love Bordeaux.
Cabs driven Bordeaux. Yeah.
So, I like them from everywhere. But
Right.
I understand that some places I like them more.
Right. And so when somebody
And
tells
Argentina doesn't do. I haven't had a cab that did much for me from Argentina. Now I've had cab blends from South
Yeah.
America that I enjoy, but straight up cab, no.
But I don't want to assume off the bat that someone tells me they like cabs, that they like cheap California cabs.
Right.
They could like Washington or Australian cabs and just not remember the label. They bought it on sale at a store and they weren't paying attention to the label. They just opened a bottle of wine. Because you and I are relatively uncommon in that when we talk about the wines that we like, we're very specific about region,
Right.
Not just country, but region within that country, certain
And I track
producers.
every single wine I drink, I have notes on.
And we're not-
so that I know if I liked it or didn't, and I won't make a mistake or miss it a second time around.
We're not just doing that because we're huge geeks. We are, and that is a factor. But it's also because when you
We
start
are.
plotting your likes, the thing about vino is
It
it starts.
brings you more.
It brings you more, and also
They're still doing that dumb thing where they text me going, "Hey, you just scanned this wine. Here's another one just like the one."
I didn't buy
And
it.
I'm like, "Yeah,
I
but I
didn't
didn't
buy
buy
it."
it based on what I saw at Vivino. How about you wait until I review and say, hey, here's one just like what you reviewed that you gave 4 stars to.
Don't
And
recommend-
don't bother telling me anything under 4 because I don't care.
don't recommend based on scans. Recommend based on purchases, verified purchases. through the
Or
app.
reviews, yeah.
Or reviews, yeah, because then you've
When
at least
I
had
say
the
I
wine.
love this wine, show me 5 more just like it. Cool. If I say I don't like it, don't
Right.
show me anything like it.
Yeah, which it's going to be tricky for me because I'm not sure I've ever actually used the word love or like within the context of a positive review.
Oh, well, I was just thinking they're going to use
No,
some
I know,
numbers to
I know.
figure it out. Yeah.
But
You're way more eclectic than me, so, it's just
well,
way
that's
it
the thing is that like when I don't like a wine, it's because it is not fulfilling what I think of as its purpose. I was just recently rewatching a Sopranos episode, and AJ stole test results to try to get ahead on an exam, and his parents yell at him, of course, and talk about what a disappointment he is and all this stuff, and it's like doing nothing. And they take him to a military school, and the major who's in charge of the school says, "So you stole the answers to an exam. That's a personal defeat, isn't it?" And it's like the most harsh, cutting thing, but he just says in a very like normal tone of voice.
Like, have you seen Star Trek? I was just Kirk in that thing.
And so the point that I'm trying to make is that if I look at a wine and it's like, okay, I'm a Spanish Alvarinho, I'm like, well, you're very low acid and you're not. It's like, it's kind of a personal defeat for you, isn't it? When I give a wine a bad review, it's not necessarily because it's an awful wine or it personally offended me. It's just like, you are not fulfilling, exactly, varietally, regionally, all of these things. You might be a perfectly acceptable Chardonnay, but you're not a Chardonnay, and that's not what I'm looking for.
You're a perfectly acceptable wine that doesn't taste like it's supposed to.
Exactly. So my negative reviews come from that more than anything else.
I remember how surprised I was when I found out that I didn't know what I was drinking.
Right.
Back in the day when I was drinking Our Dog Blue.
Yeah.
I was shocked when I was told it was a Riesling.
Right.
I was just like, are you sure?
Well, because you were used to German Rieslings.
I was worse to actual, Rieslings produced with the intention of being a Riesling,
right,
and not just a semi-sweet white that people could drink.
Well, and that's where growing conditions are so important. It's like with California Zen and Paso Robles or Point South, and in Basilicata growing Primitivo, same grape. I don't want to say the same growing conditions. Let's say mildly similar, arid, hot, desert-like conditions.
Yeah.
That's where Zen it does well. And if you grow Zen, there's a reason that you don't see, by and large. I think you ran across a Washington Primitivo once.
Yep, it was great.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you can't do it, but there's a reason that you don't run across it as a widespread phenomenon.
Yeah.
By and large, the parts of Washington that
they were called Coyote Canyon.
Yeah.
If you want to find a great.
And they probably had a specific site that worked well for it.
Oh boy, howdy was it good.
It's not just winemaking. You want a good winemaker and a good vineyard manager, because the vineyard manager is going to tell you what your climate and soil and all of those things are suited for.
Where they're pointed, they're pointed away from the sun, to the sun.
Yeah.
Those will give you different grapes.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. So you need a pilot and a navigator. The winemaker is your pilot. He's taking the wine where it's supposed to go, but you need your navigator to get you there in the first place.
Don't plant it on that hill. You will not be happy.
Exactly. Yeah, we need a hill that's about half a mile in that direction.
Over there, you want your reds over here.
Yeah, and so that's where the two work together. And good winemaking starts in the vineyard. Every good winemaker says that. And often winemakers are not viticulturalists. What they're doing is essentially a mixture of science and art. With viticulturalists, it's pretty much hard science. There's a little bit of art to it, but by and large, they're just looking at the conditions and going, you need to do this.
Poetry to me.
Well, that's the consumer side, which is the best part.
Oh, and the nose is still fantastic. So, even though we've had it open, we've got the right glasses, so it's holding with these curves, it holds the scent. I won't drink out of a straight up glass. I won't drink wine out of it because all of the nose just
I think we could have decanted it for less time. Not that it didn't open up.
We might have not had to decant this one at all.
Yeah, but again, we didn't know that until we opened it. And it did display some evolution
It certainly didn't spoil it.
No, not at all. I'm just saying that the
cherry's starting to rise to the front.
The evolution definitely happened relatively quickly, all things considered. But there was evolution. This, it did not in any way. It didn't take away from it.
Not sapped its ability to grow.
Not at all.
Mega purple or with liquid smoke. There's none of that.
There's no mega purple in this. It's just brick red.
No, it's My teeth aren't purple enough
for
this to be mega purple.
And I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't think Italian winemakers really screw around with it. They don't need to.
And these guys say they use the most modern because it just keeps getting better. So they're staying as modern as they can. I did find that out on the website.
Fun fact.
Info I like to have.
The only thing Italian engineers make better than cars is wine presses. The Chateau had an Italian wine press. They are some of the. If you want, the two countries make the best wine presses. I don't know about France. I'm not saying France doesn't make good wine presses, but Germany and Italy make the best wine presses.
Germany makes a thing really well.
I know,
How
but
could that be?
The thing is that by and large, and aside from their cars, people don't always think about Italian engineering. I will say this. When it comes to winemaking, a thing Italians love, they put their heart into it. Italian wine presses are some of the best on the planet.
I'm enjoying it. It's opened up a bit more. We only had it 40 minutes. I
Yeah.
usually do an hour to 2 hours.
This is a warm, pleasant wine.
Yeah.
We were talking last time about how the wine that we were tasting was fairly approachable. I'm gonna say that early on, this might not have been as approachable to a novice red wine drinker,
Right.
but at this stage in the evolution, if you and I had been having this wine and we were down to like this much at the bottom of the bottle, if we had given a glass away to someone who was a novice, I think they would really enjoy
Yeah,
it.
this is. I mean, I don't want to say that this is approachable, but it is. I mean, here
It's
I'm
not
having-
unapproachable.
Right, I'm not having any issues with it. I remember the things that used to stymie people
Right.
trying to drink wines. This
Right.
doesn't have any of those.
No, but at the same time, I'm thinking back to my 21, 22-year-old self, and my approach to red wines, and I was getting into them, and I was beginning to understand. Oh wow, I don't dislike red wines. In fact, I like red wines. This would have been probably about a bridge too far. I would have been struggling a tiny bit. I wouldn't have been anti it, but I would have been going, I think this is a little.
My 21, 22-year-old self would have been drinking
Keystone Light,
screaming at people from a stage and having them think that was the coolest thing they'd ever seen, and laughing at people who drank wine.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's we were talking earlier
I'd
about.
love to tell that little boy not to be so freaking arrogant.
Well, you are right now.
Yeah, he can't hear me. It didn't work, or if he could, it didn't work. He stayed arrogant.
No, it only took him 30 years.
Right. Actually, I stopped being as arrogant.
I'm glad you modified
as little
that.
as a decade. As little as a decade. Because by the time I was 30, a lot of that. Oh, look at me! Kind of went away. I mean, I still work in entertainment. I'm still doing video stuff, so it has never all gone away. But I was an insufferable asshole.
If you work as a performer, there has to be a little bit of look at me, because otherwise, what's the
There's gotta
point?
be. Why are you doing that? Well, because the money's good. It
Yeah.
can be good if you get somewhere.
Well, and that's why the Sid Barretts of the world. It's like I believe in that man's heart that he wasn't.
Just in case you don't know.
I believe he wasn't a performer because you read about how he was.
He was schizophrenic.
Well, yeah, but there was more to it than that. I think that in his heart, the man wanted to write music and did not want to have the level of fame and visibility. And I'm not saying
The
that.
thing that comes with it is really kind of, I mean, when you're young, you don't care because you're not really, you've never had privacy because you've grown up as a child and a teenager and your parents don't let you have that.
Right.
And so it's not until a little later, like when I was 21 and 22, people recognized me everywhere I was going. I thought it was freaking great.
Right.
And then when it was still happening at 30, I'm like, could you leave me the
I'm about ready to have a life of my own.
Right. I would prefer when I come out of surgery to not have a dude go, "Oh my God, you're him," and I'm like, "Oh, dude, leave me alone." I just
came out of surgery.
Right, I'm in the recovery room, and I've got a dude going, "You work with Kes."
Yep.
I'm like, "Oh yeah." So that's as a younger man, fame's awesome. After 30,
Well, and the thing is that also it's not just the age you're at; it's the amount of time you spent doing it. If you become famous at a certain age and you've never had fame, there's that honeymoon period where it's like, oh, this is great, and then it might be it's different for everyone. It could be 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, whatever, but you reach a saturation point. But in that time period, you're just basking in the glow of it, and then it's like, okay, I think I've had enough. It's time to leave the bar. I've had enough.
When I got out of the rock and roll thing and I was in the magazines, that was like perfect.
Yeah.
Because if I wanted that, I'd just go to a science fiction convention and
Totally.
everybody knew who I was.
And if you didn't want it, you just
I remember
stepped out of there.
I realized that I made it when I walked into a room at a party. There was a party going on in the evening of a science fiction convention. Someone said, "Oh my God, did you see you just walked in?" So I'm the guy in the door. So I'm like looking behind me, and there's nobody behind me.
Yep.
Oh shit, it's me. And but I mean, at that point, I did own like 7 or 8 national magazines. And if you're a writer and you're writing, you write short fiction to get a couple of credits, you can then sell your novel. So I'm like the gatekeeper, and I know that, and that's why it wasn't anybody in my position would have had the same reaction.
Right.
And it's hard to get in that position, but not impossible. Other people, I assure you, have done it.
It's funny because we were talking about our younger selves and our approaches to wine and to taste and to overwhelming flavor, and it's kind of funny how the two are similar. We can adjust to almost anything. We can get used to almost anything. And I think you and I had a bottle of was it the Enchanted Path together.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, my impression of Molly Duker has changed so much just in the time that I've been friends with Warren. Heck, just probably in the last 6 years or so. Because I used to think of Molly Duker as a little bit of an assault on the senses. And again, it's kind of impossible to know because it was a different vintage. My tastes have changed. It's not the same wine. I can't be that same person and drink that same wine again.
I just got my, it hasn't arrived yet, but I just ordered a 2015 Merlot from Molly Duker. So
Oh, is that
we can
the
go back in
Giggle? Giggle?
No, it's the Scooter.
Scooter.
No, is it the Scooter or the Maitre D'? It's the
I think
Maitre D'.
it's Maitre D'. I think you're right.
But I'm going to do a blog on Molly Duker.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I ordered all their whites because I don't have any of their whites in my cellar. The only whites
That'll
in my
be fun.
cellar are dessert wines and Rieslings.
You brought one of their whites to a Super Bowl party one time, and I can't remember. It was
would have been the violinist. But
Yes.
I don't remember what I thought of it. I don't even remember if I got any of it.
Not remembering things is a hallmark of your
Super Bowl
parties.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I get lit at my Super Bowl parties because I don't drive home. I also don't have them in my own house, but I tend to rent places and have people come, and then we have these big ass parties, and I have a drive home. Someone drives me home who's not drinking.
There's a song by the Hold Steady called "Killer Parties." If she says we partied, I'm pretty sure we partied. I really don't remember. I remember we departed from our bodies.
Yeah.
That sums up Warren's
So
Super Bowl parties pretty well.
very seldom have enough that I couldn't even get in the car and drive. Very seldom.
Well, and also, I mean,
But
you probably had like
on
a
Super Bowl
sip of
parties,
it.
I probably
to say
did.
you did.
I almost certainly did. I try to drink everything I open at those parties. At least, one. If it's a white, then I'm probably going to go with just an ounce so that I can review it.
Right.
But, I remember I accidentally left the last time I had it at Dogtown. I left a bottle of white. Mm-hmm. Never even opened it.
Yeah.
And Sam there was
Yeah.
working, and she was just like, I've been staring at this bottle of wine, and I looked it up, and
Yeah.
I really, really would. And I'm like, it's yours. And she was like, are you sure? I'm like, I'm never going to drink
Right.
that bottle of wine.
You brought it for
I
other people.
bought that for the people who
Yeah.
drink whites. It didn't get open.
Didn't get open. Go ahead
It's
and take it.
all yours.
Yep.
And she told me later it was fantastic. I'm like, that's great. I'm glad because.
Oh yeah, I mean the
it's
thing
not
is
my
that
thing.
just because you don't like something,
It doesn't make it bad.
not only does it not make it bad, you recognize that.
Yeah.
You see it all the time.
Yeah.
And we've had wines where we were like, if I like this kind of thing, I'm sure it'd be phenomenal.
If this was the kind of thing I like, this would be
I would
just
like
the
it.
kind of thing I would like. Yeah. I would like this kind of thing if it were the kind of thing I liked.
Well, this was interesting for me because
I do like this because it is the kind of thing I like.
I want to finish this by saying I am really. This whole thing has been interesting to me because I like this wine. I don't want to say that you dislike Italian Primitivo, but you
don't.
have.
But
You haven't always been a huge fan of it. I'd say you've been more of a fan of this than any other Italian Primitivo I've ever seen you drink. And that gives me hope. Because back in the day when Warren was expanding his horizons, I recommended some Italian wines. And he ended up getting into
I do remember
Amarone.
that. I do remember
He ended up getting into Amarone, but not much else. And I was a little surprised that he didn't like
I've had a couple of
Primitivo.
great Super Tuscans. And
Yes.
I like Primitivo. But, at that point when that was happening, I was just moving out of drinking so many Zinfandels. Now, I'll often, it's funny, because one of the keys when I want to try to decide that I'm going to have a Zin is to look for American California ones that call themselves Primitivo.
Right.
Because they're making a statement with how they made that wine when they
Right.
call it Primitivo rather than Zinfandel.
Zinfandel,
Because
yep.
they're losing a lot of people who are going to buy it who don't know what Primitivo is.
But might not buy it a second time if they were disappointed that they didn't get an actual Zinfandel.
So what they're giving you is they're telling you that we made it old world style. You will
Right.
enjoy this if you like old world style. And since we're calling it Primitivo, if you don't, you probably don't even freaking know.
Well, it's like people who call something Syrah in America. They're letting you know we're going for a French Rhone style
Instead of
rather.
calling it Syrah.
Yeah, well, yeah, but they're letting you know
Yeah.
that we are going for a certain style. It's informative. It's one of those things where they're showing, not telling, or telling, not
It's
showing.
funny because I enjoy French Syrahs, and I absolutely adore the correct Australian. And it's funny because I was saying that I only like one from the McLaren Vale, but that's not true. I found another one that I loved. And right now I'm blanking on the name, so it'll be a while before I remember.
We'll tell you on the next video.
If I could, I gotta look it up, but it was
We'll figure it
really
out.
Good. It was really good. So, but the thing is, you wouldn't be able to convince me they were the same grape if I didn't
Right.
know they were, because those two wines, the French
Syrah,
white
and Australian
whites,
Shiraz. Mm-hmm.
and they're much closer. I don't want to say Pinot Noir, but they're closer to that than the big over the top punch you in the mouth and then get up and slap your mama that you get from the Australians.
Well, and part of that is due to the 20-25 years that Australian Shirazes have been doing that. I mean, It was kind of an accident where that Australians didn't set out to make a big, bold, in-your-face wine. It just kind of happened.
Well, we hard to avoid it there.
True, but they made it, and it was a massive success. And you got the sense they would have just kept doing that just because that was how they made it. And they're like, oh, we can make money making? Sure, all of our Shirazes are going to be like this.
Yeah.
And that's where the phenomenon happened. So, it's one of those, sometimes a band realizes when it has a hit single.
So, if you can get your hands on this, do it. It's worth it.
But if you can't get your hands on this one in specific, keep your eye on Southern Italian Primitivos where if you're able to find out, like this one handily informs you on the label, if they dry them in the sun, if the alcohol is a little bit higher, you might get the same kind of experience that we got off of this one.
If they're making it like an Amarone, I'm not surprised that I like it more than most Primitivos.
Yeah, no, there's no surprise here why Warren likes this Primitivo.
So it's not quite as old. I mean, yeah, obviously doing the Amarone thing would be an old world, but making it bigger is not usually an old world thing. That's an American thing. But these Italians nailed it.
They know who they're selling to.
If that is why they did it, yes. If it isn't, they still did a great job.
Absolutely.
Really like it.
Well,
yep, that was very nice. Randall told me I would like it. Randall was not wrong.
He nailed it.
Randall.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for another one of these, and we'll see you next week.
Sláinte.
Cheers.